Welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. Tonight is a very special episode. We're bringing you an incredible story of an avalanche that happened only weeks ago, and the images you're seeing in front of you are from the accident. Take a minute, get settled in, and buckle up. We're going to talk through this tonight, and it's going to be an incredible story. Feel free as you're watching the images unfold in front of your eyes to share this out. It's going to be a great story. You're going to need to be able to share to all of the people you ride with, the folks that your loved ones that are snowmobilers, your clubs, all of that are going to want to hear this story tonight. And so make sure that we're sharing this out. Let us know where you're watching from, everybody. So David Wagner from California is watching. Thank you, David. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from as you're looking at this image. So I just want to describe to everybody what you're looking at as we start the show here. We've got a picture on the left side here. This is Shawn's legs. These are both legs broken after the accident and as he's at home recovering, where he's going to come to you live from tonight. And then on the right-hand side, these are pictures that were taken the day after the avalanche when the snowmobile was being recovered and some of the avalanche folks were doing their training. We've got the crown of the avalanche. Down in the lower right-hand corner, we've got Shawn's snowmobile, his pride and joy. He was out riding, having a blast, and in a split second, everything changed. So I really want everybody to kind of just have a mental picture of what happened in this accident and what's going on. And we'll be showing you the actual video of the avalanche tonight, too, during the show. And so as you're watching, as you're coming in, please let us know where you're watching from. All right. We have got a number of people watching. We've got folks liking it and sharing it. We appreciate that very much. Let me drop some of these images off the show, and then we'll get you to our normal startup. All right, everybody. Welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. Again, Jon Ferrian Live. Every week we come to you on Sunday nights, and we're talking to you about awareness, education, safety, growing the sport in a positive way. And we're here tonight to share an incredible story of a survival of an incredible avalanche that happened just back on the 7th of April. So again, drop in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear and want to know where you're watching from so we can see where you guys are at. And as we do this, don't forget, when you share the show, and when you're getting ready to go out and share this out, you're now entered in on the Share and Win contest. Woody's Racing, one of our show sponsors, is here and ready this week to provide you some nitro lubricant products. So they've got some two-stroke oil. They also have some hand wipes that they're going to be providing as part of the Share and Win. And here you go. Just watch the show tonight. Share it anywhere. Share it on your personal page. Share it on your club pages. Clear it on your, 2.0, sledders, riders. Share your local pages wherever you're at around the country. And then just make sure you're following Woody's Racing on Facebook and on Instagram. And they'll be right here, ready to rock and roll with you guys. So, all right, guys. We are going to do this tonight. Shawn, I'm going to bring you on now in 3, 2, and 1. How are you doing, sir?
I'm not doing too bad considering it's 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago we were looking at images of your snowmobile smashed into a tree, upside down, the crown of an avalanche, and your legs. And that's the part, as we look at you from your shoulders up right now, and nobody would know that you had gone through anything, right? I mean, there's no wear and tear on you more than normal on the top half of your body, but boy did the bottom half of your body take a beating. So let me first just say, Shawn, that I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to share your story. I know it was only probably a week or two ago I was doing my episode with Ryan Cook, and he was sharing his story about being upside down on under a snowmobile and having his situation, and he was sharing his story, and that inspired you to reach out to me after watching that show. So why don't you take us back to watching that episode and what was going through your mind when you reached out to me?
Yeah, I was just watching that episode and looking at some of the pitches and everything, and I'm like, oh man. And I go, I should get a hold of Jon and try to get my story out there too, because people can learn. I mean, his his tether didn't work right and all that other stuff, and shit happens or stuff happens, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, I got to get this out there, and I contacted you right then and there.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you reaching out. And these situations are always tough. And we'll just call this out right up front: is that there's frankly a number of avalanches that happen all the time that go unreported because to some degree people, some of them, if they're small enough, they kind of just laugh it off and they chalk it up to like, oh, that's part of backcountry riding, which frankly is an ignorant statement, right? Avalanches should not be part of an everyday
Right.
backcountry ride, right? It's like it should be an extreme scenario that you should be avoiding at all costs. And when people get into situations like you do, frankly, a lot of times there's enough, like, oh man, I messed up so bad, and there's a level of embarrassment, all that people don't even talk about it. Like they don't share pictures, they don't talk about it, and frankly, it never
Right.
gets reported to the Avalanche Center, and nobody learns from it, right? And so I really, really want to just tell everybody here as we get into this show tonight that the tone at which you approached me, the tone in our conversations along the way has been, you know what, John, I messed up. I've learned some valuable lessons that day that I don't want anybody else to have to experience, and I want to share my story in an effort to save other lives. And if it saves even one life, a little bit of humble pie here in the show tonight is gonna pay off big time, and
Oh,
help
exactly.
help our community out, which is why we're here.
Exactly. That's why I'm here.
All right, all right. So here's one more thing I'm going to let everybody know is if you haven't already, if you're watching, I know we got a lot of people watching right now. I want everybody to let us know if you haven't already where you're watching from. It's really important that we get to see where everybody's coming from. If you're coming from the East Coast, the Midwest, if you're a mountain rider, if you're up in Canada and British Columbia, we love knowing where everybody's watching from because it helps us target shows and future episodes and all those things. And we also then know where we're getting the message out to. And we hope that all of you guys will share this to your personal pages and everywhere else. And so, Shawn, why don't you go ahead and just give everybody a little background on Shawn Donohoe, the man outside of snowmobiling, right? Like, where did you
Uh,
grow up? Or, you tell us about your family, what you do for a job, anything else that you think is relevant before we get into the story tonight.
all right, my name's Shawn Donohoe. Moved to Leadville, Colorado 2 years ago. From New Hampshire. Lived in New Hampshire most of my life. Got two great kids, a boy and a girl, Amity and Seth. They're back in New Hampshire. Um, 52 years old. I work for a company in Westvale called Westvale Shell Towing. Love that job. I wouldn't want any other job. I love that job.
Yep.
And I mean, we go camping every weekend in the summertime. Love camping. Camping around here is like the greatest thing around besides snowmobiling.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And, and so you consider yourself an outdoor enthusiast, right? And so you're constantly outside anytime you can. Even your job takes you most of the time probably out on the highways and on the roads, and recovering vehicles. And so you're the guy who, in a lot of cases, is rescuing everybody else who maybe had some issues or some troubles. And to be in a reverse role had to be kind of an eye opener for you, I bet.
Oh, yes, it was. It was.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about your background of snowmobiling, right? And so how many years had you been snowmobiling up in New England when you lived up there?
I've been snowmobiling probably since I was 9 years old. Um, but out there, it's mostly all trail riding. I've had the old Artie Cat Panther and the old Skidoos and yeah, it's all trail riding out there till you get up into Maine. Then I started meeting with some friends that were going up there all the time, and I ended up buying a little bit bigger sled than what I had, and did some riding up and through the hills up there. And I'm like, I got to. There's got to be better places. So I moved to Colorado for the snow.
That's awesome. So intentionally just to enjoy the snow and to continue snowmobiling, or did the job opportunity come first, or did the desire to go snowmobiling come first, and then the job came once you got there?
The snowmobiling came first. I wanted to experience the mountain riding because there's no mountains out the east really that
Yeah.
you can ride. And and I see all the videos, Chris Baran, all them guys, hitting the powder, and
Yep.
that's what I wanted to do.
Yep.
I wanted to hit the powder, so
Yeah.
kind of packed that stuff and came out to Leadville.
Yeah.
And
And so let's talk a little bit about, what you personally experience is what I think a lot of folks experience is, whether you be from the East Coast, the Midwest, the flatland snowmobiling out there. There's many, many people out there who are just avid snowmobilers or passionate snowmobilers and have a passion and a desire to go, slay the powder, right? And
Right.
on the East Coast and the Midwest, depending on the circles you ride with, there's probably in general not a lot of awareness of avalanches and avalanche education, and not a lot of people encouraging people to get avalanche education. And so when you moved out to Colorado and you started riding, did you just start meeting up with local guys through Facebook, through clubs? Like, what was your interaction with the locals when you started riding with other people there?
It was most of them were from Facebook, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the guys that lived up in Leadville, I was working with him, and he hooked me up with a few guys up here in Leadville, and
Mm-hmm.
Casey, he introduced me to Casey, which you'll hear later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, and he's mostly guys that I meet from work too.
Okay.
I mean, there's a Westvale Shell. It's a busy place when not right now. It's not, but
Yeah.
usually it is in
Yep.
the winter. And snowmobilers go in there and fuel up, and I talk to them,
Yeah.
and I end up hooking up with some guys, and we'll go out. So yeah, it's pretty easy to find snowmobile friends.
Yep, exactly. And so amongst the friends you've been riding with, you did tell me that you were riding with a beacon. You did have some avalanche safety equipment with you. How did you come across that? Were some of the people you're riding with saying, "Hey, if you're going to ride with us, you need to have these things," or did
That
your dealer tell you, or like how did that happen? How did you get into this avalanche safety equipment?
um, I started out with, I think, the beacon after I went to the avalanche awareness class. They got into a lot of that kind of thing. And I started thinking, yeah, I need that. And Casey's
Yeah,
mentioned it to me. The other people have mentioned it. You need a beacon,
yeah,
especially when you go out there. And I'm like, I ended up buying a beacon, the Pro, and
the
I
shell.
started using it. I think Casey started getting on to me about a radio.
Yeah,
You need a radio. So I ended up getting a radio.
yeah.
I mean, it took people to get on my case.
Well, and I think that's important
You know what
detail,
I
right?
mean?
Is that
I
something
did.
that I preach on the show a lot? Is that a lot of times it's peer pressure from all of us as riders with their friends and the people that we ride with to encourage them to get training and education and the equipment and stuff that it takes there too. And so I'm positive and glad to hear that your friends were at least peer pressuring you to get the equipment at least. But it
Exactly.
sounds like only having been there a couple of seasons, you'd only taken an avalanche awareness class. And so tell us a little bit about the class that you attended and what you felt like you heard in that class in hindsight now. Like, is there anything that sticks out to what you remember in that class?
The class really pretty much, they got into a little bit of the slope angles a little bit, and how, like, the angle to stay away from the hill. If a slide ever happens, you wouldn't get caught up in it.
Yeah,
If there's more than one rider, you get down in
yeah,
the bottom. And different kinds of snow, and like if you see cracks, don't go near it, that kind
yeah.
of thing. But a lot of it was mostly into products.
Yeah, I was talking about the beacons,
Couple
the shovel, the
videos of
probe.
an avalanche. Yeah, they hopped on beacons, they hopped on radios, but I mean, it was more like they were trying to just sell them. You know what I mean? Because they
Oh yeah,
hopped on it so much about that.
yep. No,
So they weren't teaching you much about an avalanche itself.
yeah. And so
Show them.
yeah, I mean, you end up going out in the backcountry and riding, and in your own words to me on the phone calls we've had, is you weren't necessarily out there proactively thinking about avalanche terrain and avalanches. You were basically just out there riding and having a good time and hanging out with friends, and that was kind of your tradition, right? It's just to get out there with buddies and ride, and weren't super thoughtful about the avalanche conditions, and didn't necessarily have an understanding of what it means, and the sun's cooking the mountainside and that kind of thing, and
Right.
a sun exposed slope versus a shaded slope and how that can be different. So those are things you had no experience with going into this.
Full experience.
And the
Exactly.
reason, and everybody, just so you know, I mean, the reason we build up and we talk about all these things, I mean, we're about 15 minutes into the show already, and it feels like we're dragging it out to get to the story. But what I'll tell you is that what I'm trying to do is establish some foundation for all of us, right? When we all go out riding in the mountains, everybody who's watching, and if you're ever going to go out for your first time, it's not uncommon. What Shawn experienced is, I share my first experience, right? Is the first time I lived in Minnesota and I went mountain riding. buddies I went out with, and those were my experts, right? They would tell me like, yeah, you need to rent a beacon, but we didn't really train with it. We didn't really understand how it worked all that well, but we had it on, right? And then like
Right.
other buddies were like, yeah, we should take an avalanche awareness class. And so it took me a couple of years of riding similar to you in the mountains before I took an official avalanche awareness class. And then as I got more and more information, it became more and more obvious to me of like, oh man, we really need to figure this out and, do it the right way. So those are all important details, and that's why I want to go back to now the accident and the day of the accident. And Shawn, anything else you want to share with us that led up to that day before I go in and I share the video again? I know everybody saw it in the preview that we put out there this week, and we got almost 19,000 people have watched that video. It's already gotten out there, and a lot of people have seen it. We're going to show it again here just now in a minute. But anything else you want to share before we show that?
I think between that, just to going to the avalanche awareness class, having the beacon on, I mean, it kind of gives you a false sense, unless you really know what you're doing and taking real classes. It gives you a kind of a false sense of security. Yeah, you're wearing the beacon, but like you said, do you know how to use it? I really don't know how to use it. I think I do,
Yeah,
but I really not sure. I haven't never tried it.
yeah. And as
I think
bad
I did
as
it once.
And as bad as your avalanche was, and as bad as your injuries were, one thing you got extremely lucky about was the fact that you weren't buried in the avalanche; that you actually were on the surface when the snow settled and you were done. And we'll get into that in a minute. But let's go ahead
Yeah.
and watch the video here. Well, I know Shawn, on your side, you won't be able to see the video because Shawn, you and I are on a Skype call. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the video for everybody, and I'll mostly just let it play and be quiet. It's only about a minute long, so let's flip over to the video. All right, let me start it over. Yep, I'm rewinding. There we go. All right, so Shawn's climbing the hill. You can see him over here in the kind of the left side of that open part of the slope, and he's cutting to the right, cutting over to the left. And this is about pretty close to where the slide triggers. And one thing I'll call it is that you're at the very top of the slide.
Oh shit!
And your buddy Casey
Oh
screams.
shit!
The slide's coming down the hill.
Oh fuck!
It's taking you right down through the trees.
I see you, bro.
The tree shakes violently, and you pop out the other side.
Hi. You good?
And you yell out, "No, I broke my legs." And so I'll come back to bring you and I up on the screen here. Give me just a second. All right, so that is a pretty powerful video, Shawn, that everybody just watched here. It was you climbing the hill, getting to the top, and as you cut across, from one side to the other or near the top, where I'll point out is some things that happened was, that hill, there was already tracks on it. People had already ridden it earlier in the day or maybe the previous days. And, I want you in a few minutes here to talk about why you chose the line you did and what you picked. But ultimately, you got strung down through those trees, and those trees stopped your snowmobile. You impacted the trees, obviously, with your legs, and that's what broke your legs. And then you got lucky and popped through. But the fact that you were at the very top of the avalanche when it broke is one of the reasons you didn't get buried. If you had been mid-hill or towards the bottom of the hill when it broke, there's a very likelihood you would have been buried on that slope. But take us back to that day, and talk to us a little bit about the ride before that, and when you approached that hill. It was late in the day, but just talk us through it. And let's tell the story and go into some detail all the way through. And what I'll do is, if I want to pause, interrupt you to ask a question, I'll put my hand up for a second or something like that. So, but feel free to just start sharing with us what happened that day.
Yeah, me and my buddy Casey, we met at Indy Pass where they closed the road for the winter. It was probably like noontime, 12:15, I think, and we went up the trail and up the road, and we were taking it's shortcuts up the road. I mean, we'd take the hill up to the next part of the road where the switchbacks are and everything. And we'd cruise. We were cruising. It was a beautiful day. It was a bluebird day, obviously, real sunny out, nice. And we had a great day. I mean, we were climbing some hills that were, I think, a little worse than what I climbed there. And but it was different conditions. It was earlier and it was shady, and on the way back, we like decided to hit that one hill that last one time, and so we hit it too many times. We hit it way too many times. I mean, I was going up towards the left a few times and going up and coming back down. And I stayed more to the left. Then Casey would go up and hit high mark. And I think he did that twice. And then the last time he's like, I'll videotape you. And I don't know why I decided to just go up the middle. I don't know why. I was gonna go down up that side, and I'm like, screw it, I'll try to beat his high mark. So when I was going up, I started going to the left, and then I saw his mark, and I'm like, I'm gonna go up. And for some reason, I tried going up further, and when I started to turn, I didn't even hear it, nothing. I just got thrown off my sled. I was like sideways when it hit me, and it just threw me off the sled. And I rolled down. I think I rolled maybe twice underneath the snow, when I had to rip my helmet off because it filled right up with snow. Thank God I didn't have it looped in like normally would. I just had the snap on there, and I'm glad I did because it was packed with snow. I felt like I went under like 3 times underneath the snow, then came on top, then went under, then came on top again. And then I saw the trees at the last second, and next thing I know, I was on the other side already. And thank God I hit them trees, so it popped me up, because if I ever got caught up in them trees or anything, I would have been buried, I think, just like my sled pretty much was. And I knew right when I hit the ground, I knew both my legs were broken. I just knew it. I didn't even see him yet. I just knew it. Yeah. And so, I mean, Casey's screaming all the way down, freaking, he had his eye on me. Whatever people think, if they want to call that a laugh, or I think that was emotions.
Yeah, let's talk.
Had me. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So this is a great spot to pause, right? So you pop through the trees. Casey yells, "Are you okay?" You say, "No, my legs are broken." And so that's where we're going to pause for a minute. And let's go back and kind of and talk through what happened up to that point. Is you were at the top of the slope. As soon as the snow started sliding, you lost control with your sled, right? You tumbled off, you fell off. It was almost no way to stay in control. And so, churning down the hill, something that you described that I just want to kind of really highlight for folks is that, when you're churning through an avalanche like that, one of the things that happens is, everything tries to fill with snow. Like, it's not uncommon for people's mouth and nose to get jammed full of snow. You described your helmet getting jammed full of snow. Something else happened that you haven't mentioned yet, but I know it happened in that turn, is you lost your backpack, right? Let's talk about your backpack for a minute. What style it was, what you had on it, what you had in it, and what happened with your backpack.
Yeah, it was just a regular backpack, Colombian backpack. It was just pretty much to put drinks and set of goggles and things like that. Something to munch on when we were out there. And when I was tumbling down, it ripped right off me. The bottom strap just ripped, and it just came off my shoulders. And I mean, my radio was in that, and it was a cheap bag. It was not an Avalanche bag and nothing like that. It was just a regular backpack.
Yeah, and I think it's important that, as you talk about things, because there's emergency supplies in there. Like, for example, had you and Casey been riding the hill at the same time and both you gotten caught, and you were able to, like, think about it, your backpack is gone now, right? Your Avalanche shovel, you had shared with me, I think the other thing too is that your Avalanche shovel was on your sled, right? Not in your backpack.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's something I'll call out for everybody as well too, is, in hindsight, you lost your backpack, it ripped off. had you needed your shovel and you needed to do a rescue for Casey, not that you could have with your legs the way they are, but like if roles were reversed and he was the one hurt and you weren't, again, golden rule is one person's on the hill at a time. So thank God you guys were at least following that and not both of you were caught. But, in that scenario, if you ever needed your shovel, having it in your backpack and having a good quality backpack that can withstand that force. And that's where, for sure, Avalanche packs have I'll call this out as a crotch strap, right? They go down between your legs and buckle from your back to your front, and it keeps the backpack from like lifting off of you or getting pulled off of you in that kind of case. So a lot of times the right equipment can make a big difference. And in this case, the backpack you had just got shredded and got ripped off you with some of your emergency supplies.
Right, exactly.
Yep. And so you went through the
And
trees. Go ahead.
it's all learning right there. I mean, you're exactly right about the shovel. You got to keep that on you.
Yep.
I mean, it's no good when your sled's buried and you're halfway buried or whatever. At least you got your backpack on you.
Exactly.
If it don't fall.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, to me, I'm trying to get people to learn from my mistakes.
Exactly, right. And we're grateful for that. So thank you, Shawn, Shawn, for doing that. I was thinking of your buddy, for a minute there. Sorry. And so, let's talk about Casey's reaction, right? And I just want to share a personal story for everybody too, to kind of give people some context. And something I will tell everybody here, and I'll look you straight in the eye and I'll tell you this, is that, you know what? Nobody knows how they will react physically, mentally, psychologically. Like, you don't know how you will react in an emergency situation until you're in an emergency situation, right? And if
Right.
nobody has ever sat there and witnessed their buddy coming down in an avalanche or witnessed somebody in a car accident, being taken away. I mean, I personally have had a traumatic experience where on my way to work one time, a little lady was, run over and was nearly killed and then ultimately was killed in a car accident as she was crossing a crosswalk. I came on the scene. People came to her rescue, and I ended up trying to call 911. And like my phone that I use every single day, that I know how to use, I'm an expert at using my phone. In an emergency situation, I struggled to dial 911. Right, like I could not get my finger in my brain to connect the dots in more than a minute or two. It should take me 5 seconds. Right, 911, boom, on the phone. But it's like everybody reacts differently, and the only thing that can
Yeah.
really prepare you for an emergency situation, and especially one like this with an avalanche, is that training. It's the practice, right? Like going through a level 1 avalanche class, learning the skills, learning the tips and tricks and all those things that are there, going through rescue scenarios, and mimicking what would happen in an actual avalanche, and then doing it over and over again, even with your buddies throughout the season and practicing. And so,
Right.
when I heard the video of your buddy, what other people were hearing as laughter to me was like, oh my gosh. And it was like kind of nervousness and jitters. And like you could tell his voice was there, but I personally didn't take it as laughing. But a lot of people in the comments were like, why is your buddy laughing? What a butthole, right? That kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
you called it out. It's
I
like
don't
that is
feel
not what was
that
going on.
I could hear it in his voice. I mean, when I watch the video, I can hear the scaredness in his voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might sound like he's laughing, but he's like, holy shit.
Yeah. Nope, absolutely.
And,
And so you're on the bottom of the hill with broken legs. Your buddy Casey shuts off the camera, and then let's go from there. Like, any part of the story up to that point you want to share that we missed already, or you think we got it?
no, that's pretty much it right there, all the way down to the trees.
Okay. And you'd think that part of the story was bad enough, but frankly, it only gets worse, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. At that particular moment after I hit the trees and landed, I didn't feel any pain. I mean, I knew my legs were broken. I had no idea there was a bone sticking out of my leg because I was wearing climb boots. Those were good. I think those helped me a lot from when I hit the trees.
Okay.
And but when I popped out, Casey came running up to me and he's like, "All right, bro, we need to get your legs straight. I'm gonna go get some sticks and some rope, but you got to drag yourself down to where the end of the avalanche was." So yeah, I dragged myself by another, I don't know, 50 feet, maybe 100 feet, maybe. By the time I got down there, he was all set with the sticks to splint my legs. He had the rope handy right away. bam, my legs were splinted within 10 minutes.
That's amazing.
He's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I got no phone service. Nobody had one of those GPS phones, and, you know, so I'm like, you got to put me on your sled, dude, and get me out of here. I just want to get out of here. So he put me on the sled. My head was leaning against his handlebars, and my legs were going towards the back, kind of staying on the footrest on the back. Okay. I mean, he straddled me, kind of sat on me to hold me on there. And we were riding, and we probably got like maybe a half a mile, and it was incline. It was on both sides. There was no flat spot like a trail.
Yeah,
it was
had a side hill through.
So he didn't even tell me. He's like, he just went for it, and he's like, lean, and I was leaning, and we fell off, and that hurt the most of this whole thing, was falling off of that snowmobile again
with 2 broken legs, and, splinted.
Yeah, 2 broken legs,
man.
And it was crazy. And I'm like, what do you want to do? We still have no phone service. I don't want to leave you right here. I'm like, throw me back on. That guy picked me up. I mean, I don't weigh that much, 160 pounds, but he actually picked me right up and threw me back on that sled. And we probably drove another mile before the terrain just got too bad where we couldn't. So I'm like, drop me off in the sun. So he left me in the sun, and he went and, as fast as he could, tried getting phone service. He had to get in his truck and drive another 8 miles before he could get phone service. On his way back, he called his wife. She rushed up there. I think they got there pretty much at the same time, back at the parking spot. And she ended up going through my truck, found a blanket and a jacket. Then her and Casey drove back with that. And they called, what is it? Flight for Life.
Oh, Life Flight, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and so they got there. They wrapped me up in the blanket and the jacket, and she was great. She's like comforting me, trying to hold my head up. This is Casey's wife.
Did she ride in double on his snowmobile with him? Okay.
Yes, she did.
Okay.
She could do it. She didn't have any broken legs. But yeah, she was a wicked big help. I mean, and we waited there. I think I waited there probably an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and 10 minutes for them to come back. So I was like by myself thinking in my head what just happened here. And I'm like, no, my legs are broken. I can't believe I just lived through an avalanche, you know. I'm thinking, I just wish I got buried. You know, it's bad thoughts going through my head because, I mean, I don't know if I was scared.
Yeah.
And I never feel that way again. And I wouldn't want anybody else to feel like that, you know.
Well,
so
I'll pause you for a second because I think, you know, there's an important part of the story right here too that, you know, you think about it when you're riding with just one other person. You know, ideally you would have had a satellite communicator, right? I mean, we already called out that was a miss, and you don't have one. I bet you'll be getting one for your birthday or Christmas soon, right? As soon as you're back out in the mountains riding, I'm guessing you're going to have some kind of a satellite communicator with you. And you know, but think about like the fact that someone had to go for help and ultimately had to leave you behind. You know, with only 2 people. You know, say if there was 3 people or 4 people, right? Like you guys could have divided and conquered, right? Like you could have sent 1 or 2 people off for the rescue. Someone could have stayed with you, ensured that you're okay, you know, comforted you, maybe helped make a fire potentially. And so, you know, just having an extra person, right, on that day riding would have potentially made a big difference in even comforting you for what happened.
Right.
And there's like, you know, to me, I can't imagine a more lonely, desolate feeling than sitting there for that hour and a half by yourself, you know, probably almost, I think you said it subtly, but I'll call it out as probably wishing you had died instead because of what all was going on, right? It was this craziness of like, I was just in shock, right? I can't believe what just happened. and here I am alone on the mountain in pain, like not knowing what's coming next, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
it's just probably
Hoping Kate doesn't get into an accident, you know. I mean,
yeah.
just bad things through my mind. I can't believe my poor wife, you know. I just saw my life flash in front of my eyes.
I've been there I've
It's
been there
crazy.
before. I'll tell you, I've been in that situation before. Like, I haven't shared this broadly, but back in Minnesota, there was an accident where I actually broke my back, snowmobiling. Like, I was in a snowmobile accident myself where I broke my back, and the feeling of getting hurt was horrible, right? It was a very painful thing. It was a compression
Right,
fracture. So, thank God I didn't like break my spinal cord or anything like that. I wasn't paralyzed, but like I was by myself, in rural Minnesota and I wasn't prepared for it. And, so that was one of those things where I got back to the house and when I started thinking about everything that I'd done and the risk I had taken and like that emotional feeling for me was probably the strongest of feeling I've let my family down. I've let my wife down. Like I made such a bad decision. Like that's how I internalized it at the time. And I can imagine that's probably how you felt in that moment too, was like, I let my family down, right?
exactly. Because I'm like, I'm not. How can I work? I got two broken legs. You know, I can't even go to work now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I sat there and cried because of that.
Yeah. I hear you, brother, man. God bless you.
I mean, it's not an easy feeling just being left by yourself with two, with any kind of injury.
Yeah.
Basically, just left by yourself for an hour or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
A lot goes through your mind.
And so then your buddy and his wife showed back up and they were there with you together. And outside of them just caring for you, what was the conversation like over the time period that you were waiting for the helicopter to arrive? Do you remember much of the conversation?
They were just talking about stuff they were doing, and you know, you're going to be all right. They weren't really trying to get into what happened. They
Yeah.
were trying to keep my mind off of what happened.
And that's good.
She and his wife's like, "Oh, margarita night when you get through this and that." I mean,
Wow.
just trying to make me, you know, smile and keep my mind off of the bad things.
Yep, absolutely. And then
Um,
the helicopter shows up. Let's talk about that.
and then helicopter shows up, and yeah, Casey went to grab one of the EMTs in the helicopter. He ended up getting stuck on a snowmobile, so he spent probably like 15 minutes trying to get it unstuck with one of the EMTs. Well, there was already two at my side, and
Okay.
there was another. I think it was the helicopter driver gave him a hand getting unstuck. So when he got unstuck, they put me on like a skid
Okay.
and kind of dragged me because there was a big hill they had to climb, and they couldn't use a snowmobile to do that. So there was like four of them just pulling me and one pushing me and holding my legs going up a steep hill. It was a small little hill, and to where the helicopter was. Then I think Casey ended up dragging me after that about another 100 feet, 100 yards or something like that to the helicopter where they loaded me up.
Okay. And this whole time you're conscious, clear mind. You didn't black out or like forget all of this or anything like that.
No, that's what's crazy about it. That's why it's pretty fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Well
been
the
fresh in my mind for a long time, I think.
Well, and you shared with us on the phone too, and you called it out here. Is like you almost didn't have any pain of even though they were broken, right? Your legs, you didn't have a lot of physical pain from what you described, which is I have no idea. Like I've never done that kind of a severe break in my injury, whether that's normal or not normal, whether adrenaline or your mind just takes over and kind of dulls the pain or what. But it's amazing that you didn't experience tremendous pain other than when you fell off the sled for a few minutes.
Yeah, that was pretty much the worst pain of it all. I mean, I knew it was what was happening with them. I knew they were broken. I mean, but I wasn't in excruciating pain.
Yeah,
I mean, they were just kind of, I don't know, numb.
yeah. And so
I mean,
how was the helicopter ride? How long did it take them to get you to the hospital once you were up in the air?
um, I think it took them like not even a half an hour to get to Frisco.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's when they shot me up with some drugs there.
yeah.
Right before they transported me and brought me up the hill, they gave me some drugs for the pain, but I didn't even really need it.
Yeah.
They loaded me up. They took good care of me. Took like a half an hour for them to get to Frisco, like I said,
Yeah.
and they all went in the hospital with me. And once they got my boots off, my pants cut off, they were taking pictures of the bone and everything like that sticking out, and my other foot. And yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. And so somebody asked a question here. I think it's an important question we want to go back to for a second is with the helicopter is how did the helicopter know where to go? Like, did your buddy give very clear, specific instructions or a GPS location, or is it an open enough area that they could see you on the mountain? Like, how did the helo know exactly where to find you guys?
I believe he said we're about probably 2 miles in from the. I'm not sure how Casey did that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, they were looking for us. I mean, they were flying around looking for us, and Casey and his wife had flashlights.
Okay.
And
it was about
actually
dark by then, right? Like it was getting dark or close to dark?
Definitely dark by then.
Okay.
And Casey started his sled and drove around so they could see the light. And his wife was shining the flashlight in the air and stuff. And I think it took him like 5 minutes to find us.
Awesome. And so we're getting close to the end of the story here. And so if anybody has additional questions, right now is a great time to start dropping your questions in the comments, and I'll ask those as we go here too. So right now, great time is, so somebody says most of the time they can track the cell phone. So the cell phone, no cell phone signal. So I don't know if they were able to track a cell phone there, but if you did have a place where you had a cell phone signal there, let's finish the story and then I'll come back to some of these questions and stuff too. Some of the questions are starting to roll in now, but
Sure.
Feel free to keep asking questions, guys. I'll come back to them and we'll get through these with Shawn. So you're in the hospital and they x-ray you obviously, and did they put you immediately into surgery? Because the x-ray you showed me was they put in rods, they had to like piece it together. I mean, there's exterior hardware on your legs, kind of holding your leg in place right now. So
Right.
talk through the extensiveness of the damage and what they had to do short term, and then you had a follow-up surgery afterwards too, right?
Exactly, yes. When I got to the hospital, they had to, my right leg, they put a rod, they drilled a hole through my knee and put a rod from like my shin bone all the way down to my ankle bone. And I think they tied that into the I'm not sure what bone it is, if it's the shin bone. That's the one that went through the leg.
Okay.
On my left one, they just pinned it and rodded it just to hold it till the swelling went down so they could operate in that one, because that was the worst one.
Oh, really?
That was shit pretty good. Yeah, that's the one with all the pins and the screws and the plates in there.
Wow.
That's the surgery I just had. But they went right to work on my right one that night.
Okay.
I mean, right when we got there, they gave me an MRI. Then they took X-rays because they didn't know if I hit my back or if hitting my feet jammed my back or whatever. They kept asking me if any place else hurt on me, and I'm like, my legs don't hurt on me right now.
Yep.
So they did the whole 9 yards with that, and they operated on this right one right away, and I can actually put weight on that one. So,
wow. Okay.
and they told me right away when I got out of the hospital. I think I was there for 2 days.
Yeah.
They told me I leave, I had to put weight on it before I left.
Oh, wow. Okay.
On my leg, so I could get around.
Makes
the
sense.
left leg, so much.
Yeah. And so what was the first moment you got to see your wife? Was it like after you were at the hospital and after your first initial surgeries, or did she get to come in and see you before you went into that initial surgery?
It was actually, I'm trying to think about that. I think it was after the surgery.
Okay.
She just said no.
I was going to say, what hurt worse, was having to look her in the eye and tell her, honey, I made a big mistake, or was it the accident itself?
She ended up finding out because she was worried. She knew something was wrong at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. She knew something was wrong. And she ended up calling people. She was looking for my truck over at Casey's house because he don't live that far from me. And she didn't know we took separate vehicles.
Okay.
And so she ended up calling the police, and they told her that she was that I was caught in an avalanche and in the hospital. That's all they told her.
Yeah.
And so she rushed down there, and she was there before the surgery.
Nice. All right. So what I'm going to do next is I've kind of, by talking to you on the phone earlier, I made a kind of a list of, what went right, what went wrong, and we can kind of talk through some of this. And then what we'll do is we'll tackle the questions that are coming in and keep asking your questions, guys. We can stay on. I'm assuming, Sean, you got nothing else to do other than sit and heal and answer questions, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. So let me go through kind of, my mindset after hearing your story of, kind of what went right, what went wrong, right? And there's some things that I
Right,
want to make sure that we call out about what went right, right? There's a lot of things that went right, and I'll call out the fact that you survived this, right? Like, there's a lot of things. The fact that you were at the top of the avalanche when it happened, and you were above the debris instead of down at the bottom of the hill. Like there was somebody was looking out for you. The fact that it even, where you were positioned on the avalanche definitely caught you to pop up. The fact that you weren't buried, that's something that went right. You were wearing a beacon, right, under your jacket, it
right.
sounds like. And so if you were buried, at least your buddy, Casey could have found you if you were buried. So there's a lot of things that went right there. The fact that you weren't two guys on the hill at one time, right? So the fact that it was
Right,
one guy on the hill at a time. Um, the fact that your buddy knew enough to keep his eyes on you the whole time. Because frankly, I think a lot of people called this out in the kind of the pre thing is that, why did your buddy just sit there and record it, right? Like, why didn't he like just run or something, right? And so there's, kind of blessings in disguises is like, to some degree he was in the runout zone. If it was a bigger slide, he definitely could have been at risk. And so that's something,
right,
quote unquote, that could have went wrong was the fact that he's at the bottom of the hill in the slide out zone, that potentially was a higher risk scenario where he could have gotten hit too.
right,
But it wasn't. And so the fact that he was there and had a place where he could see you the whole time and keep eyes on you, that was something that definitely went right. But again, preferably he'd have been in a different spot off to the side or somewhere else if he was recording you. Your buddy did get out and he was able to get a hold of 911 and everything there too. The downside is it took so long. Whereas if you had some kind
right,
of a satellite communicating device, he could have stayed with you on the hill and you guys could have hit SOS 911 right from the mountain and he could have been there comforting you and the rescue probably would have taken less than half the time, very likely.
right. Yeah, it took
Um,
like 4 hours
yeah. And the fact
from
that
the
you
time I
didn't,
got to the time I got rescued.
yeah, no, it's amazing. It's a long time to be on the mountain. And you're lucky it was spring conditions, right? If it was cold, normal
Right,
wet weather, that would have been bad. And then let's go through kind of the what went wrong, right? And so, you guys didn't have great avalanche training, so that was something up front that maybe would have made a difference in your day had you
exactly.
considered the fact that the sun was baking it and all that kind of stuff. You guys didn't check the avalanche forecast before you went out, it sounds like, right? And so you
Right.
weren't really thinking about avalanches and avalanche awareness. Um, let me just look here quick. Yeah, we talked about the sun being kind of soaking, and that's something I want to just call out for everybody because that's an important one, especially in spring riding. For anybody who's still out there riding now, sun makes an incredible difference. Like you can get away with riding some stuff early in the morning, the first half of the day, this time of year, because stuff overnight is still freezing typically, and it's hard and set up. But it can be kind of icy, and a lot of times we're not riding in the mornings because we know it's not going to get soft till the afternoon, right? But the earlier in the day, the better to do anything kind of big climbs or craziness. But like by the time you get to that 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun's been baking that hill all day, pay attention to where the sun's hitting the slopes and whether, if you walk up there, if you ride up there and you're kind of sinking in because it's really slushy and heavy and wet snow, that's a sign that that slope is really heavy and wet, right? And even if it's a wet slide where yours was more of a slab avalanche that came down and kind of as a combination of the both. But just something to consider is the sun soakingness. Um, it was wind loaded, right? So that was something that maybe wasn't obvious to a lot of people right up front, including you. But the top of that mountain was scoured, like it was bare on the top, like you could tell it was wind
Right.
blowing and stuff. And then that area you were riding in was a nice, soft, fluffy section, right, where all the snow had loaded in there. And that's a sure sign that you've got wind transferring snow over into that area, and that's where you get those wind slabs and stuff. And I think that's ultimately what you triggered when you got to the top and you got to a thinner spot that then cracked and propagated out, and it just caused the whole thing to collapse and break. Your backpack we talked about, that was, no
Yeah.
bueno, kind of a bad quality backpack, and it got ripped off of you. No satellite communicator we talked about already. Um, you know, Having only two guys there too, and having to try and ride double out, that was a challenge. That's something definitely that went wrong. Um, just the amount of time it took. We talked already about the fact that your shovel was in your tunnel instead of on your backpack. And so that's kind of the gist of it too. And we kind of like the pros and the cons of what went right, what went wrong. But, with all of that in mind now, one of the first questions we have is, from Travis up in Canada. It says, what is your biggest takeaway from your experience? Like, if you had to kind of just give some advice to folks based on what you've experienced now, what's your biggest takeaway?
I would go to a better avalanche course than what I went through.
Yeah.
If I went through a better one, I think I would have known the conditions better. I probably, like, they must put it in your head to look at the conditions, the avalanche conditions when you go out riding. I've never learned all that. And I think the more training, the better. Train,
Yep.
train. It's like an athlete. I mean, basically is what it is. We're athletes, or we try to be athletes.
Yeah.
And try to push ourselves. And I think getting the experience is the best.
Sounds great.
My takeaway from this.
That's great advice, and I would concur. I agree with you that would be, what I've told a lot of people over and over again is, if you've got the basics, the shovel, beacon, and probe, and the next thing you're going to do is spend $400, do you buy an airbag pack or do you buy an avalanche class if that's all you can afford? My advice always is take the avalanche class because, if you take the avalanche class, you get the education, you take it seriously, you'll probably likely avoid even getting into an avalanche, which is the point of the avalanche bag is like, if you don't ever get an avalanche, you don't need an avalanche bag, right? Because you're not going to put yourself in danger. But, if you can do a training class and have an avalanche bag as a backup, like that's the best, right? Like if you have all the tools available to you to minimize all the risk and you've taken all the training and you hope you never have to use it. Like the best investment I've ever made is a, $1,000 backpack that I've never had to use, right? But it's like I took the training classes first. So.
Right. And that's what I need. It's the training,
Yep.
Pound it in your head.
Yep, absolutely. And so you'll be signing up this.
I don't even want to see somebody do what I did.
Well, Shawn, write down a name when you get after the show here. Is a gentleman named Brian Lundstedt. Actually, just a few episodes ago, I interviewed him right after Rob Kincaid passed away that same weekend, and I had him on, and he's from Tyler's Backcountry Awareness right there in Colorado. So look him up, and I'm sure he'll go out of his way to take good care of you.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's what I love about this community. I mean, they're all about taking care of you.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, he does classes there, and he's probably the best price, most anywhere around, and does an incredible job. And unfortunately, Brian lost his brother Tyler, which is the name of the company, Tyler's Backcountry Awareness, in an avalanche. And so that's what inspired Brian to become an avalanche instructor and to put his heart and soul into it. So he's a great dude. I've had him on the show twice now. What do you recommend or insist on for equipment since this experience?
The right equipment, a backpack that, keep your tools on you, your backpack, your shovel, probe, those got to stay on you. The radio is a huge thing.
Yep.
I mean, like you said, I could have got saved twice as fast.
Yeah.
Instead of 4 hours, I could have been 2 hours, and he wouldn't have had to leave me.
Exactly.
You could, know what I'm saying? That's a huge plus.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think an avalanche bag would have saved me at that particular moment. You know what I mean? I don't know if it would have helped me or hurt me.
Yeah, honestly, the fact that you ended up on top of the avalanche already, I can honestly tell you, I don't think the avalanche bag would have probably helped you any, right? Because if you came down and hit the trees the same way you hit the trees this time, your legs still would have been broken, right? But the avalanche bag would have kept you on top. And so in this particular case, the avalanche bag probably would have not made any difference for you, but never know.
Probably the biggest tool is the training.
Yep, 100%.
Then you hope you don't have to use those other tools.
Yeah. So there's a question here from somebody named Paul Klein that he's asking that I'm expecting you probably don't know the answer to, but I'm just going to throw it out to everybody and see if anybody in the comments knows the answer is there a radio channel that the helicopters typically use? So I don't know if that's something you learned along the way, Shawn, that, hey, had the helicopter been up there and you guys been using radios, you could have called them quicker, like in the helicopter. Did that come up in conversation?
I believe Casey was trying to get a hold of him on the radio, on his two-way, whichever. I'm not sure which one he uses, but he was trying to get a hold of the helicopter.
Did he know what
when it was going by?
Yeah. Did he know what channel?
He didn't know the channel.
Yeah, that's.
He was just trying different ones.
Yeah, and so it'd be interesting to know, like if anybody does know if there's a typical radio channel that helicopters use for emergencies, it might be worth trying. I mean, I've heard rumors that channel 9.11, like for 9/11, could be a security or safety channel, but that's not guaranteed to work for everybody. But all right, and so we got other comments. People just appreciating you. It says awesome story. Glad you made it out. A lot of people just giving you a lot of positive comments for sharing your story. Um, this is a good question, and I think you mentioned it to me like early on when you first reached out to me. I'm going to ask the question kind of verbatim from Scott Hennessy's. It says, "Any nightmares from this? Are you sleeping okay? Like, have you had any like flashbacks or nightmares of the experience that played over and over again in your head that's causing you to lose any sleep or anything?"
Yeah, when I first got out of the hospital, when I was having nightmares. I probably had nightmares probably 3 nights, 4 nights, and they started calming down. Most of the nightmares were just how I let my family down. Every once in a while, I'd almost feel myself turning in the snow when I was sleeping. I mean,
Yeah,
it'd wake me up, and
that's
but yeah, I just
yeah,
I had some,
yep, that's crazy.
and I can close my eyes and still like I can see the whole. It's like the video. I can still. It's right in my mind.
Yeah. Well, and it's super unique to actually have a video of an entire avalanche that,
Yeah.
specifically that you went through like that too. I mean, that's super rare, not very common. And the fact that your buddy held the camera on you the whole time and didn't turn away or put it down as soon as the avalanche started coming. And so it's kind of a blessing in disguise that you're able to kind of replay this and we can all learn from it. So, kudos to you, Casey, for keeping cool and, keeping things together and helping out that day. So, God bless you, buddy.
I love you,
Um,
man.
yeah, exactly. It says, any idea what the avalanche warning was for that day? Did you go back and look, or did you pay attention
It
after the
was
fact?
it was. They said it was moderate, 2 out of 5.
Yeah, so there's different color codes. In case anybody doesn't know, is you've got green, which is low, yellow, which is moderate, considerable, which is orange, red is high, and then extreme is black. So there's like 5 categories you can go to, and usually it's a very generalized forecast, right? And so for that time of the year in spring riding, having a moderate condition is pretty standard. But the part I covered a few episodes ago with some folks who had a local avalanche here in Washington State was that sometimes you got to double click in, right? Literally go in and read the details. If you just look at, not you personally, but I'm talking to everybody that's watching the show tonight, is, if you only look at the color and kind of the headline, you're not going to get the full story. And so it really is important for everybody who checks an avalanche forecast to go in and read the detail and what the problems are and what elevations they are and what aspects they are and all that stuff. Because, likely what you experienced, the whole area in general probably was moderate, but it probably called out things like wind loaded slow, and I didn't go back and look at the forecast that day, so I can't speak to your specific area, but things that do get called out are wind loading, wet slush slides from the solar energy of the sun. Like all these things would be pretty traditionally called out this time of year in an avalanche forecast,
Right.
had you read into it and known that ahead of time. And maybe with the training, heeding those warnings, maybe could have changed the way you rode that day and where you rode. So,
I'm sure the training would have helped.
all right. Dave Rogers says, any contributing factors? I think we've covered almost all of those. I don't know if there's anything else that stands out to you that you want to recap or
I think a
cover, but
lot of it. I think a lot of some of the factors to me was just the amount of times we hit that slope.
yeah,
I mean, that was huge. I mean, if we only went up once and left, you know what I mean?
yeah, more times than
We
not,
beat it up. We beat that hill up pretty good.
yeah,
To me, I mean, the report said it was a 35-degree angle. I mean, it
yeah.
was right on that cusp of what I learned of 34 degrees. And to me, it didn't look like it was that steep to me. So we just beat the heck out of it. And yeah, and that had a lot to do with it.
Yep, sounds good. And I've got somebody else here just making a comment. I don't know if I'm going to say your name right, so forgive me if I butcher the name, but it's Dorleen Telcott says avalanche awareness is very different from an avalanche course. And I'll just call that out too. Like an avalanche awareness class like you took, to your point, it's kind of really focused on the equipment. A lot of times these dealerships are trying to sell you equipment when they're doing these avalanche awareness classes. And, to go through an actual class where you're hands-on in the snow, spending, 3-4 hours of classroom plus another 4 hours on the snow, that's just like that's not even a level one. That still is just kind of a first level basic avalanche class. And then to go to a level one is like 3 days of training. It's actually usually a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Usually it's, a third of it is classroom roughly, and then about 2/3 of it is out on the snow with a professional that will actually show you and run you through scenarios, take you into avalanche terrain and point out things to look for. So.
Right.
All right. So somebody commented, Jim Johnson says Channel 9, I believe. I think he's referencing back to the helicopter story. So, or the helicopter channel. Not that you'd normally have access to on our radios. Okay. So somebody else. So Alex is a friend of mine here locally who's involved in the Coast Guard. And so he's just referencing military, type emergency radios might be on a different bandwidth than what we normally would have anyway. So. So somebody else saying thank you for sharing. Thank you. Hope you heal well. Casey Campbell, that must be your buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says thank you, John. Was very hard and scary as crap. I love you, Shawn. And now I have connection. With no one I can break. you and I now have a connection that no one can break. So LOL. So your buddy Casey's calling you out as he loves you, buddy. So he's glad you made it through and glad he could help you out. All
Glad he
right.
was there.
Yep. All right. I think we've got it. So, here's let's talk about this for a minute. Is somebody's asking, Scott Campbell asks, who gets the sled out and how? And so, once you talk about that, like the next day it was, right? Or within a day or two?
No, actually, it was the Saturday after. I think my accident happened on a Tuesday, and Casey and he got some friends of his, which I'm grateful for. They went to get my sled, and they ended up chainsawing the snow from the tunnel and the track because it was like ice.
Yeah.
Because it was so packed in there, and I lucked out with that because pretty much the only thing it broke was my headlight and the hood.
Okay.
And one of the bars on the inside, the carbon fiber bars, they went in, they drove it out.
That's amazing.
And I couldn't even believe it. But
Yeah.
it took them probably like 4 hours to get it.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the snow conditions. You said they had to chainsaw it out, which I don't know that I've ever heard of that before. Usually people just chisel and dig away forever, but it's hard. But let's talk about, an avalanche and the way the snow works, right? Is so like when an avalanche triggers, a lot of times you got slabs, but bottom line, what you have is you have a lot of snow moving down the hill really fast and it's all churning up and it's actually superheating the snow. So you've got frozen contents that are being heated up just from the friction of sliding down the hill and interacting. And the second it all stops, it immediately starts to refreeze because of the temperature of the snow itself, immediately starts to freeze. And it's been described by many, many people over and over again. And I've personally interacted with avalanche debris after an avalanche. Thank God nobody was in it, and it's rock hard. It's just like concrete. And so now imagine yourself buried under the snow in this concrete tomb. Like snow ain't light and fluffy anymore at that moment in time. It's like liquid concrete that you've just gotten poured into. And now you're hoping your buddies find you really quick. And to go back to your sled the next day or two, it's literally like it was encased in ice, right? And I'm sure there was snow under the hood and jammed into every orifice on the machine and like all kinds of stuff, right? And they couldn't even get the track spinning at first, right? They had to go in there and chisel all the snow out of the track area and everything.
Exactly. I mean, they said they had a pretty rough time. They brought the chainsaw because they thought they might have to cut a tree down.
Yeah.
That it was against, but they didn't have to cut the tree down. They just cut the ice out of there and the snow and cleaned it out. They put a little bit of gas in because it was like on its side, the gas emptied out and everything like that.
Yep.
So they put a couple gallons of gas in there and the thing started right up in 2 pulls. Gotta love Polaris, baby.
Yep. Well, Shawn, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video one more time and let everybody watch it, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap the show up here. So let's go back and bring the video up. So here we go. Here you are climbing up the hill. So everything we just talked about, everybody, this is the avalanche that we just got done talking about, the accident that happened. And it's just crazy to think of, everything we just heard today and what Shawn and Casey went through and what they
Oh,
experienced.
shit!
And just as a reminder, Casey was
Oh,
was
shit!
panicking, and you could just hear the stress and the scaredness in his voice. And then we're seeing the slide coming down through the
Oh,
trees,
fuck.
and we can see your
I see you,
snowmobile.
bro!
And what looks like you were right up near your snowmobile, right to a certain point in time, and then you got separated from the snowmobile. It looks like, and you can see the trees shake when the snowmobile and you hit the trees.
Yeah, I think I hit the tree to make that shake like that.
Yeah,
I think pretty much what broke my legs.
You good?
yeah, yep. Nope, my legs. Yep. And so let me go back to bringing you back up here. So, man, just to be able to experience that. Talk about life lessons, buddy, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean it's going to be nervous to freaking go back out there, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going
Well,
to fix that sled and I'll be back out there.
we'll get healed up and get back to work. That's most important, right? Is start
Exactly.
supporting your family and getting back to living your life again, and hope everything
Living
goes
live.
living large, right? And so just remind everybody, right? What live large is all about is it's live life to the fullest, make the most of every day,
Exactly.
make a difference in this world is what you just did tonight, right? Is you're making a
I'm
difference in
hoping
other. You did, absolutely, you did, and the amount of people who are watching this, the amount of times it's been shared, it's driving awareness, and I guarantee you, somebody who's riding the rest of the season will start making different decisions than they did before. I know we're going to fill up more Avalanche classes than we do in before, and something I'll just share with everybody. I've got a little teaser here. Something I've got in the works is I've got a partnership with some new merchandising. So I've got Jon Ferrian Live Large shirts that I've had before. I haven't had them available for a while, but I'm getting ready to relaunch them with the desire, Shawn, you'll appreciate this, is to start an Avalanche scholarship program. I'm going to call it
awesome.
I'm going to call it Live Large Universe, right? And 100% of the profits that I would personally make from any of the merchandising will go into a fund to do Avalanche scholarships, right? And I'm going to start looking for potential ambassadors from around the country. I've got one gentleman already, Todd Kramer, who's one of my Live Large ambassadors, but just kind of help share the message of safety and education in their areas and their communities, and help get the shows shared out and all that. And ultimately, for every dollar that people spend in there, 100% of the profits that would normally come back to me that aren't getting into t-shirt costs and all that, we're going to put into Avalanche classes. And I've got Brian Lundstedt from Tyler's Backcountry Awareness that has already donated 2 level 1 classes for us to be able to kick this off with, right? And so I'll do an official show later on to let everybody know this, kind of the formality of it and the done of it. But I would tell you too that I've got Jessica Carter from Extreme Realities that's going to start helping design t-shirt logos and some Live Large logos, some stuff that's really cool. She does wraps and stuff already, and so she's really got her finger on the pulse of the industry to kind of hopefully make some gear that's really cool for everybody to do. Things like stickers that you can put on the back of your trailers and your trucks, Live Large stickers. We'll have some cool images with snowmobiles, with some mountains. And really, I want to continue to take stories like these and help get the message out, and then turn around and help folks like yourself in the future who maybe, some people have the means, some people don't, to, sign up for a $400 Avalanche class, right? And if folks can help, show that that investment is going to help pay off in their community because they're going to embrace that and share that out, then I want to help make that happen. And so I know we'll have a lot of great partnerships. If any Avalanche instructor around the country is watching this episode and wants to kind of learn about this and reach out to me about it, I'd love to partner with them. Maybe we can come out with some special pricing that can help our dollars go farther even. But I'm hoping we can give away multiple Avalanche classes every season. It'll be for next season. Next year is when we're going to do this. But within the next week or two, I'm hoping to have the website up and launched with at least the initial phase of the products. And then we're going to have some different things there too. So just thought I'd share that out there. Again, we're trying to take stories like this and make sure that they don't happen to others in the future. You sharing the stories and getting people trained, that's going to be a big part of it. So
I appreciate you having the show, John.
awesome. Love it, buddy. Well, God bless you, buddy. Live large and have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
No problem.